Hey everyone, and welcome to The Grind. We are back for another episode, and we've started a new series called The 12. And we are going through the lives of the apostles, Jesus' apostles, and yes, he had 12, but we're going to go through 7 of them. And so the first one that we're going to talk about is James. Now, I'm sure all these apostles, did not really imagine themselves to be following after Jesus.
Yeah.
And they had like different backgrounds. Like some were fishermen, some were tax collectors, And so I just want to throw out this question to you. What did you want to be when you grew up? Like what were some aspirations, dreams that you had?
Batman.
Oh, definitely. I can see you wanting to do that.
That's not an accurate answer. I still want to be Batman.
Well,
Wow, I was gonna say something else, but I actually wanted to be like Indiana Jones, an archaeologist.
oh,
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
we really are thinking along the same lines because I wanted to be a paleontologist
Oh, really?
until I realized I wasn't smart enough to do it. Then yeah. But
Yep,
like
same.
digging up bones seemed like a fun thing to do for a living at some point.
Yeah. Love it.
wow. I thought about it would be cool to be an astrophysicist.
Oh, what is that?
Astrophysics.
So basically, she wants something from outer space, and we like digging past.
Yeah. And we're
Future.
just digging in the dirt.
Digging in dirt and future oriented. Yes, clearly the opposite spectrum. But anyways, moving on. So we have James, and we see that he first started off as a fisherman. And I think the interesting thing that I think not many of us know is that these men were actually really young when they were called into ministry. Because Jesus, when he was started his ministry, he was 30 years old, and it's 30 years old. I wasn't even, I don't know. I mean, yes, I was in ministry, but I don't think I had my life sorted. But you have the Son of God at 30, leading, teaching, and so very likely that when he called the disciples, they were no older than 30 years old. So some of them might be actually young teenagers. Yeah, they could be the kids.
Basically.
Peter might have been the oldest because he was the one that was married or something. But basically, these are kids. So in cartoons, I know in Sunday school in cartoons you see the apostles. They're all like
Bearded.
and everything.
Yeah.
Almost the same age as
They all
Jesus.
look
exactly.
They all look middle-aged.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in actuality, they're like our age or actually younger. Actually, maybe Dom's age, technically speaking. So
Hey, Dom.
Hi, Dom.
yeah. So
Perfect time to follow Jesus.
so
The implication is on your end, not mine.
anyways, so yeah, these are young men that Jesus used. And so, first one who's called was James. That's the one they were not the first one that was called, but one of the first. He is in the inner circle, and so the first one we're talking about is James.
Yeah.
So we know that it was costly for James to follow Jesus because James, he came from a pretty well-to-do background, and basically he gave that up to follow Jesus. So for you guys, what was the cost you had paid in being Jesus' disciple?
It's a kind of a hard one to answer because we're still young, and I think it's hard to answer without like the gift of retrospect.
True.
But in terms of what has come before, then you don't really, as a kid growing up in church, you don't really grow up like the rest of your peers at school, I suppose. In the way that you live your life, the way you spend your weekends and stuff.
Yeah.
That's actually.
There is a marked difference in how you spend your time compared to your friends, I think.
Yeah.
And it can be seen as like boring while everyone else is out having fun. So, I mean,
Yeah, I guess.
when you're that age, I guess that is a sacrifice. As
Yeah,
well.
that seems like a cost,
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess like growing up in church, life is definitely different. And actually recently I was just thinking like, would I be considered successful? What in terms of like society, right? I mean, because I think if you were to look at say me and what I have achieved, I think, on like the world standard, it
Yeah.
feels as though I haven't really done so much. Like I don't have my own, like I don't own my own house. I don't own a car. You know, my assets are minimal.
That's why I've avoided every single high school reunion thus far.
Yeah, because
Oh,
I remember.
wow.
I don't want to have those conversations.
Same,
Yeah.
same.
Yeah, because then I know like before when my friend, my classmate, she became a lawyer, and then people talk about how like, oh, how big her desk was and how she's a personal assistant, and I'm like,
You have a desk?
that's big. You know? So it's definitely, yeah, it got me thinking, and my dad was, I actually was talking to my dad about this. My dad's like, you are successful. You're working for God, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's, you know, our perception of, you know, success and cost and everything. And yes, like, you know, in the world's view, like, yes, it seems as though it cost you a lot. You know, you gave up like what could have been, you know, pursuing a, you know, career and, you know, getting money and wealth and stuff like that, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think it's exactly the same thing as what probably other people who work for James's dad
Yeah.
in the business,
Yeah.
that his son actually left
Yeah.
a potential like
Yeah.
future business for the children,
Yeah.
and for him it's like a big loss.
Because he was well to do because the father had hired hands, like had
Yes.
hired servants. So James definitely gave something up. And I know when I was saying, like, when I was working, well, making the decision to work at church, I know my family was like, oh, wow, okay, she's becoming this, you know, in a sense. Then they'll be like, this one went all the way to the States, you know, and
Wow.
is becoming like this, you know. So it's all the money spent on your education. Almost like, I guess, in thinking like, what's the ROI on this one right here, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, I think that was things, you know, here and there that, am I successful, am I not, you know, that's the cost I had to pay, like, you know,
Yeah.
the ridicule that you face from family, and, well, I mean, not really ridicule, but just more like, you know, passive aggressive comments on the side.
Again, tell me you're Asian without telling me you're Asian.
Preach. All right, so looking at James, right, he was in the inside circle, and you know, he was privy to specific situations that none of the other disciples got to see, like one of which was a transfiguration, I think the raising of Jairus' daughter. And so, but despite that, like, so the three in the inner circle is James, Peter, and John.
Yeah.
Except that compared to Peter and John, James wasn't exactly very well recognized. He didn't exactly have the same like recognition that
Yeah.
Peter and John has. It's not like people's like, oh yeah, James was in the inner circle. Kind of forgot about him, you know? And so is there a struggle that you've had regarding God's seeming unfairness in his providence? Anything that you're like, oh, God, kind of unfair that this happened for that person? And I'll say this,
Let
I've
me think.
definitely compared myself. You know, I've seen people like in ministry and be like, man, why did that, you know, this happen to them and I didn't get that? Or
Yeah.
how did that person get to meet that speaker, you know, and like, I mean, I was, you know, the same level too, that kind of thing. So it's little things like that. And I know there was one time on a mission trip, and I guess I wanted recognition as a leader. And I got a bit bitter because, not bitter, I guess, a little bit irritated because me and Josh Pettigrew at the time were the youth pastors, so we're leading a team. And there were, you know, youth in our team, and then there were also like one adult leader that came along to volunteer, and then we had two pastors join on. At the end of the trip, you know, the host, he gave us a gift to kind of say thank you. And I got pretty upset because the gift that we got was the same as the youth. But then the adults, the older adult and the pastors, they got a nicer gift. Not that I really cared about the gift. I'm just like, it just shows like, you just,
Status.
The appreciation stuff.
yeah, like
the
you
part.
basically treat us as one of the kids, and not, I mean, me and Josh were busting our butts to lead this, and we were treated like the kids. So that's when I was like, come
dear.
on, recognition right here, hello. So as you can see, I'm not bitter about it. I'm just, you know, have been healed, and just saying that was one situation where I was like, where's my recognition?
Oh.
But yeah, it's okay. I've moved on. We're good.
I think for me it's more of like just in the area of status, like of course like when you go to church you would encounter different Christians,
Yeah.
and a lot of them are more well-to-do, and
Yeah.
And it's just that you always think like, Lord, why am I the one with the trials and tribulation while these
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
don't
yeah.
really have? But in retrospect, we pretty much have the same issues and concerns that we have in our family life. But then when you're at church, you would see other people and you're like comparing yourself as well, like you said.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, what? I'm like,
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like that.
I mean, it is like the comparison game, and no matter what situation is, often does lead you to like feeling ungrateful about what you've got.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
yeah.
And I'm trying to not make this sound like a joke, but sometimes I look at our YouTube subscriber count. Also, please like and subscribe. I look at our YouTube subscriber count and just go, why aren't you growing? And like looking at other places and their numbers are
Yeah.
through the roof and everything. And I'm just like,
Then what are we doing?
what's
What can we-
going on? So yeah, there.
And I'm pretty sure like the disciples played the comparison game like crazy.
Oh,
Because
definitely.
there's 12 of them, right? Everyone vying for attention. 3 made it to inner circle. How come I didn't make it to inner circle? And
Yeah.
how come he gets to be there and I don't get to be there? And especially for James and John, they were trying to be smart. They're like telling Jesus like give us a seat on your left and right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
So, and they were trying to like get in there. So everyone's just vying for position and so very ambitious people.
Yeah.
So, but I think you can see throughout their lives that they, laid it down and they, figured out what was really greatness, what really is the worth pursuing. And, I think at the end of the day, like throughout the rest of their lives, they probably weren't playing the comparison game anymore.
Yeah.
So, a last question for today is, what are some of your personal lessons that you've taken away from James? I would say this: James remained faithful regardless of whatever recognition was given to him.
Yeah.
So I think that that was great because, at the end of the day, this is the first apostle who died, who was killed for Jesus. Like when they said, "Grant us a seat on your left and right," and then Jesus, "Are you sure you're able?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're able." For James and John, and little did they know that James is the first one to die. But James, he surrendered everything for an unknown future. And I think sometimes we don't know what's going to happen, right? And saying yes to Jesus, you never know what's going to come. And I think one thing that I learned from James is it's not about the recognition. It's just being obedient and following after Jesus.
Yeah.
And even though we don't know what's going to come, like, it's fine.
Yeah.
God, like what's the quote that Ken said? God qualifies the called and doesn't call the qualified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for me, just in the aspect of like, be ready to say yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever- Like for example, for James, he was still in the middle of a fishing job
Yeah.
when he just left the job and
Yeah.
followed Jesus. So for
Yeah.
us, I mean, for me personally, something that I've been learning this past few years as well is that when the Lord speaks to you, be ready to respond, because whatever the case is, whatever the goal is, it's always gonna happen whether you're gonna be part of it or not. So,
Right. Yeah.
So might as well be part of it.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think if I look at James's whole life, and also even up to now, the fact that we are still talking about him, that he didn't have as much recognition as maybe he would have liked at the time. History has seen him become a man that we still talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has left a legacy, whether he planned to or not. So, just doing the best with what he was given, and to the point that he was killed for it. So doing the best with what I'm given now can be an example for someone in the future.
Yeah, that's
I
good.
suppose. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Because Jesus has called all of us specifically for something in our lives. And I think all of us found ourselves in ministry unexpectedly. Because
Yeah,
if you were to
same.
ask us,
Definitely.
from the very beginning,
Yeah.
did we imagine ourselves working in church when we grew up? I don't.
I'd still be
I mean,
fishing. No,
we wanted to be digging in the dirt. So.
yeah,
exactly.
and I wanted to be in space, So it's definitely we've come. Yeah, we're grounded here, and so you just never know what, how Jesus can use you, and our hopes, our dreams, our desires, and maybe we might think like, oh, it's a cost. I have to put it aside. to pursue Jesus. But you never know that like the dreams and desires that you have, that Jesus can really use it to grow you as well, to bless other people. But it might come into play like later in life. You never know. And I think what's amazing about James is he chose to take that step of faith and just stepped out,
Yeah.
And again, unknown future, but with Jesus there's peace, there's fulfillment.
Yeah.
So
Amen.
yeah, so hopefully, as we go through the disciples, the lives of the disciples, and, I'm sure different ones will resonate with you.
Yeah.
And hopefully, God will speak to you powerfully and help you see that, God can use very imperfect people like the apostles to, fulfill his will. Therefore, he definitely can use very imperfect people like us as well. So know that wherever you are, God can use you.
Amen.
So yeah, thanks for joining us for today's discussion. We'll catch you in the next one, and take care. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. There's two of it.